So I made a purchase. I've actually had this car for a little bit, but haven't done anything with it yet. Just a little bit driving on the street. A little bit of an impulse buy, but I think it's got some potential. It doesn't really line up with a lot of the things I've purchased over the years and what I currently own. But it's going to be interesting. So, well, without further ado, let's just check this thing out. Come on out into the light. Oh, you can see it already. Yep. I bought a four-door Buick. Specifically, this is a 2001 Buick Regal Grand Sport. So, if you're familiar with these cars, they're supercharged V6, 3.8 liter. It's a front-wheel drive car. It's probably about, I don't know, 3,500 pounds. I didn't buy it as a daily driver. Didn't buy it as a weekend cruiser. Bought it for something different. The plan with this is to make a racer out of it. I know people are probably thinking this is probably the last thing you'd ever think of making a racer, but I should clarify, more drag racing, and even more specifically a sleeper. So general goals, we'll get into that. We'll get into more detail later, but at least on the exterior, I want to keep it as stock as possible, even down to the wheels as far as I can go. But inside, under the hood, everything else, yeah, that's where we plan on making some changes over time. So let's see what happens. So let's check this thing out. 2001 Buick Regal. It's pretty clean. Actually, it's really clean for what it is. Not sure if you can see too well here in the interior. It's a little dark, but kind of gray. It's gray leather. I think Regal Grand Sports kind of came pretty much loaded, at least for a Buick. It's very late 90s era design. These cars, I think it was 97 they came out. 97-04. The Regal's basically the same car as a Grand Prix. Yeah, same drivetrain, same everything. But yeah. All right, so what's under the hood of this beast? Yep, 3800 Series 2 supercharged. That is a 3.8 liter. It's actually a Buick motor, V6, GM, obviously. This thing is bone stock. It's a 2001 with about 140,000 miles. Looks like it lived a pretty reasonable life. Not a lot of wear and tear. But this does have an Eaton supercharger. Obviously front-wheel drive. 4-speed auto. Pretty much everything you could get. Early 2000s. I mean, for GM, this is not... I guess you had Cadillac as the top of the line stuff back then. Obviously still today. Yeah, I mean, for Buick, this was not their highest end car. Back in the day, they had LeSabres and what else did they have? Park Avenue. This motor was shared in some of those vehicles. They stopped making their V8s in '96, I believe. So this is probably the best motor they had back in the day. And this engine obviously was in multiple different vehicles. We're going to be hooking up with our friends at ZZ Performance for some upgrades under the hood. This thing bone stock is 240 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque. Not quite where I'm at up here in the hills, but still pretty good. It's kind of hard to say how much power you lose when you're talking with forced induction versus naturally aspirated. I take this thing down to Bandimere. We're gonna make some naturally aspirated, excuse me. We'll take this thing down to Bandimere. We're gonna make some kind of baseline passes, probably do a few passes, see what this thing will do stock. I remember if I was reading recently, I think it was like 15, maybe like a 14.9. But that's a sea level. So up here at elevation, band number is 5,800 feet. You know, it's still late summer, early fall. So maybe a second slower, maybe a little less than a second. Typically cars, street type cars, 12 seconds, 11 seconds on up, typically lose about a second when you're at Bandimere. So if this thing runs 14.9, 15 flat stock at sea level, hopefully we can avoid a 16. That'd be nice. Sorry if some of the gauges are flickering there, but yeah, fires right up, runs good, no warning lights. It seems like a solid car. So this thing comes stock with 16-inch wheels, 225/60, 16 tires. Traction should not be an issue, at least in this configuration. I think if you were at sea level, make a little more power, you might spin a tiny bit, but I'm guessing you probably won't even spin it all up here at elevation. Even with, I'll have to do a little research, but I mean, even with adding a little bit of power, lightening up a little, probably have to go a little way before you really start spinning. It's a pretty big car. I think it's about, if I didn't say already, I think it's about 3,500 pounds. But yeah, it's got some, I don't know, 20% tint, I guess. Maybe, I'm not sure what's on there. It was on there when I got it. Otherwise, it is bone stock. It's clean. I mean, it's got some scratches and no real dings, though, on it. Even in its bone stock mode, it's definitely a bit of a sleeper. The Regal and the Century, I believe, are basically the same car, at least in this era. Century got a smaller engine. The Regal, especially the Regal Grand Sport, got bigger engine, or obviously this one being supercharged. I believe it's probably equivalent to a Accord, Camry, etc. as far as size car nowadays. I've driven it a bit on the street. It's not fast, but especially the elevation here, it's not bad. I'm not really a white car person. I'm definitely not a four-door person, at least with cars. I think of all the cars I've owned over the years, except with the exception of like third doors or like a fourth door hidden door in a truck, I've only ever owned one four-door vehicle, which I currently own, which is my Suburban. This is the first ever four-door car I've purchased. So kind of more fits the mode of the sleeper. I imagine, I didn't look too much, but the Pontiac Grand Prix GTPs, which is based the same car in the Pontiac version, I think they go for a little more money when it's more or less the identical car, obviously cosmetically different, but as far as drivetrain. So I thought this would be kind of fun as a sleeper. I looked around for a while, found a few. This one for sure was the cleanest for the price. I paid less than $3,000 for it, so it was a pretty decent deal. Yeah, so long-term plans, who knows? But short-term plans, take it to the track, see what kind of times we can get out of it. Then I'm going to bring it back here, and before even doing anything with performance, thinking about lightening it up. And that includes just gutting the interior, doing a nice job, but gutting the interior, gutting kind of everything is not needed. Everything is not needed. Eventually put a race seat in it, probably even gut the dash at some point. I mean, if I can get 500 pounds out of it, can I go half a second faster? Probably at this level, probably, yeah. So we'll take its Bandimere, we'll figure out the exact weight. Then we'll get it back here and start lightening it up and see what we can do. Eventually, you know, basic performance mods, smaller pulley, exhaust, intake, Probably an intercooler. These things do not come with intercoolers, so pretty limited on boost because of that. I think these superchargers can probably go up to around 15 psi. Currently it's like 7 to 8 range. Even up here at elevation, I think it's still around the same. So I don't know. I mean, 240 horse now. I mean, I don't care. I'd run race gas in it because just for the use. I can crank up the boost and, you know, eventually maybe a cam. I don't want it to go too crazy. I mean, who knows about turbo? I mean, they have turbo kits for these things. You can make 500 plus horsepower out of them. I assume, you know, you're in destroying transmission territory then. But I mean, even 300 to 350 horsepower out of a car that's less than, I don't know, 3,000 pounds. What's that going to do? At sea level, that's got to be 12s, probably 13s at elevation. I'm not sure 100%, but we'll find out and see what happens. But yeah, doesn't look like much now. And ironically, with the plans I want to do, it's not going to look much different, at least from these angles, in the short-term future. But pop the hood, look inside, it'll be a bit different. And hey, maybe we can surprise a few people. So let's see what we can do with this thing. I really have no expectations so far. I've seen videos on YouTube, drag times all over the place with these type of cars, the Pontiacs and these. So I don't know. There's quite a few of these out there. They're relatively cheap, so looks like a fun thing to modify. We'll see what we can do with this thing.